Hello everyone, and welcome to the Biblical Bookworm. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm excited for this video today because for this video I read books by major Catholic YouTubers, and in this video I will briefly summarize my opinion on those books. I don't know if I'm the only person who felt like this, but before starting a YouTube channel, I honestly thought that YouTubers, not only Catholic YouTubers, but YouTubers in general, just try to rip their audiences off when publishing books because I assumed that they already said everything in their videos, and now they were trying to sell the same content in form of a book. So what I did a couple of months ago is that I decided to read a book by every major Catholic YouTuber I knew of. And out of pure curiosity, in order to find out if books by YouTubers are really worth the money and if they differ in any way from other books. So I did that. I read 11 books by Catholic YouTubers, and in this video I will talk about my findings. I will tell you what I like in books in general so that you can better understand my ratings and why I liked certain books and why I disliked others. I will tell you my opinion about the books by YouTubers in general, as well as a separate opinion for each book individually. And at the end of the video, I will tell you what my 3 favorites were and why. The other books will be in no particular order because I don't want there to be a worst book, as I don't want to be disrespectful to the authors. And by the way, I will make separate videos for most books I talk about today in the following weeks, so please consider subscribing if you haven't yet. First, I'd like to explain a bit how my rating system works, so what I'm looking for when reading books. When I rate a book, that does not mean that the book is objectively good or bad. What it does mean is that if you have a similar taste in books like me, so if you often find yourself agreeing with my opinions, that means that you are probably also going to agree with me on the rating at hand. What I am looking for in books is their ability to solve a problem or answer a question and the density of information. So the more information per page, the better for me, which means that I usually don't like narrative books like biographies, visions, or novels, because that's just not the type of information I'm looking for. What also plays a role in my ratings is if the information in the book was new to me, for example, because there are few books written on that topic. And that's more or less it. If a book is exceptionally funny or beautifully written, I will mention that, but those aren't things I'm actively looking for. In my more recent videos, I also try to differentiate who I think the book could be for, so please always take my ratings with a grain of salt. Now let's get to my opinion on books by Catholic YouTubers. In general, I would say that they don't try to scam you. As far as I can see, the books do contain mostly content that is not available for free on YouTube. And what I noticed is that books by Catholic YouTubers usually contain more personal stories than other books, which is kind of understandable because as YouTubers, they already have an audience that knows them and is potentially interested in their lives. The books I read have a higher density of information than older books, and by older books I mean books that are a couple of centuries older, but that is something that I observed with modern books in general. Let's start with the books individually. Again, there is no particular order, only the last 3 will be my top 3 books. First, we have Pray, Decide, and Don't Worry, 5 Steps to Discerning God's Will by Bobby and Jackie Angel and Father Mike Schmitz. And I already made a video about that book. It's about discernment, and I'd say it's a pretty easy read. The 3 authors share their personal discernment stories, which can be helpful if you want to determine how normal your discernment process is. And for example, I think that Jackie Angel said that she didn't want to get married or have kids before she met Bobby, who is her husband now. I'd recommend the book if you're a fan of Ascension Presents, and of course if you have something to discern, or if you're really interested in the lives of the authors, because again, they talk about their personal discernment stories in the book. Then we have In His Zone, 7 Principles for Thriving in Solitude by Father Mark Goring. Now, in this book, Father Mark writes about a self-experiment he conducted where he spent 8 days on a raft in solitude, and from this experience he deduced 7 principles on how to thrive in solitude. The book is good and helpful content-wise, and I also really like to learn from Father Mike. I think the content of his videos is excellent. The thing is that the book is really short, and I'm not sure if I can make it an individual video because my videos usually are 10 minutes long and the book is only 74 pages long. We'll see if I can manage to make it a video of its own. I'll try to. I think it would be a good fit for Advent. So overall, my only problem with this book was its length, but I acknowledge that the length fits in the corporate identity of Father Mark's videos, as the videos are always really short. Next we have Go Bravely, Becoming the Woman You Were Created to Be by Emily Wilson Hussam, which is a book about living out one's faith. This book is clearly marketed towards women, and Mrs. Wilson Hussam mentions in her videos that the vast majority of her audience is female, so it makes sense that she targets the book at women. I don't think that was necessary to market the book this way because I think that its content applies to everyone. Just pick a more neutral cover, change the title to Be Brave, and maybe adapt a few phrasings, and you have a book that is appealing to everyone. Content-wise, I liked the book. It was really sweet and I really appreciated the stories the author shares in the book because it shows her sensitive and vulnerable side, which I didn't expect her to have, because in her videos she's always really energetic and confident. So it was pretty cool to get to know her on this other level as well. I also read Infiltration, The Plot to Destroy the Church from Within by Dr. Taylor Marshall, and the problem with this book is that I have no way to verify if its content is true or not, because Dr. Marshall, for example, talks a lot about theories regarding apparitions of Our Lady, and he theorizes that some parts of the apparitions have been kept secret, and it's all very uncertain. When it comes to the topic of the crisis in the church and the Second Vatican Council and all the topics related to that, I have to say that I don't know enough to have an opinion that I would like to share publicly. That having said, I honestly liked the letter to confused Catholics by Archbishop Lefebvre more than Infiltration by Dr. Taylor Marshall, because Archbishop Lefebvre talks about facts. He describes what's going on in the church. He describes how the masses are celebrated without reverence and how some parishes lack devotion. The question is just what conclusions to draw from this information, while Dr. Taylor Marshall just lists scary theories, which I'm not a big fan of. As I said at the beginning of the video, I don't like to read about visions, and this book is about uncertain theories about visions, which is really not my cup of tea. So I'm probably not going to summarize this book because I'm not sure if the content is true, and as I have no way to verify that, and it's a bit my responsibility to choose the information that I show on this channel. I also read the book Life is Messy by Matthew Kelly, who is a Catholic YouTuber as well, but here the problem was that his book was not about Catholic content in specific, which I didn't know when buying the book, and I only realized that after a few hours in, or maybe even only after having finished the whole book. I didn't expect a Catholic YouTuber to publish a book that is not specifically about Catholic topics, and the book wasn't bad or anything, it was just not about a spiritual topic. He talks about his experience with tragedies in his life and how he dealt with them, so content-wise it's comparable to A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis, but I'm not going to review it because I only talk about Christian books on my channel. Then we have Unpacking the Mysteries of the Rosary, Connecting the Spiritual Fruits to Our Daily Life by Keith Nestor, which I reviewed a couple weeks ago, and Mr. Nestor actually sent me a free copy of the book, which I'm really grateful for. It's a pretty solid book about a traditional topic, namely the Rosary. I just was already familiar with the fruits of the Rosary, which the author describes in the book, but for everyone who is looking for inspiration on how to pray the Rosary, I definitely recommend the book. It's easy to understand, well-structured, and informative, so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I absolutely recommend it. Check it out. Or if you want to have some more information on the book, you can first watch my summary and review on the book, which I made a few weeks ago. Next, we have Catholicism, A Journey to the Heart of the Faith by Bishop Robert Barron. The book explains the Catholic faith, and I have to be very honest with you and say that I personally didn't like the book. That doesn't mean anything. It's totally possible that I overlook masterpieces because I also didn't like the Story of a Soul by Saint Therese of Lisieux or The Imitation of Christ, so it happens that I overlook good books. I'm not going to summarize that book in a separate video because my problem with it was that I didn't get much information out of it, which was probably due to the fact that the book was written in order to be beautiful and not necessarily in order to be efficient at conveying information. I had a similar problem when reading Confessions by St. Augustine because Confessions is more of an artwork than a non-fiction book, and as I've said before, I look for information and not beauty when reading. I think it will become clear what I mean when I'll read what the chapters in the book are called. For example, we have chapter 4, Our Tainted Nature's Solitary Boast, Mary the Mother of God. So you see what I mean? In my opinion, calling a chapter Our Tainted Nature's Solitary Boast is not the most efficient way to say that the chapter is about Mary. I'm not saying that the book is bad, I'm just saying that I personally didn't like it. Then I read a book by Trent Horn, namely Why We're Catholic, and I think the book itself was good. I just would not recommend it to people who already are Catholic and who do not have any doubts or discussions about whether Catholicism or Protestantism is true, because for me there wasn't much new in the book. I am going to summarize it because I acknowledge that not everyone knows Catholicism, so it will certainly be beneficial to talk about the information contained in the book. And now we're getting to my top 3 books. The books before were in no specific order, but the next 3 are my favorite ones. The third place goes to Let Go, 7 Stumbling Blocks to Christian Discipleship by Father Casey Cole, who has the YouTube channel Breaking in the Habit. I really liked the book because it was very informative, and it is more or less an explanation of the story in Matthew 19:21-22. Jesus answered, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." When the young man heard this, he went away sad because he had great wealth. Father Casey explains that the call to sell everything symbolizes detaching oneself from whatever you personally have to detach yourself from. In the case of the rich man, that was the money, but that is not the case for everyone, and the author lists things one could detach from, but as he says, the list is not complete. And I really found that helpful because now it makes sense when the Catholic Church teaches that you can become just as holy in the married state as you can become holy in the religious state. Because for me, that didn't make sense initially, because only in the religious state people can really sell everything. And so I didn't understand how people could become just as holy also in the married state where they can't sell all their possessions. Number 2 is How to Be Happy, St. Thomas' Secret to a Good Life by Matt Fred. I already made a video about this book a longer while ago, almost a year ago, so the quality of the video is a bit worse than my videos now. And also back then I didn't fully appreciate how good the book was because I didn't have that much of a possibility for comparison. Matt found the sweet spot for being informative and entertaining at the same time. The book is easy to understand, although he covers complex topics, and it also had a high information density, which is something that I personally like. And what makes the book entertaining is that Matt shares personal stories from time to time, and the book is definitely not an autobiography in disguise, so the personal stories really enrich the book. I gave the book a 9 out of 10 back then, and after having had the possibility to compare it to other books, I can confirm the book is really a 9 out of 10, and I definitely recommend it. And my favorite book from all the books by YouTubers I've read so far was Made for Love, Same-Sex Attraction in the Catholic Church by Father Mike Schmitz. Now first, this book gets bonus points for the courage of writing a book about such a topic because he could have picked a less controversial topic. The book is mainly targeted at people who experience same-sex attraction or their relatives, but I personally think that it is useful for every Catholic or Christian because you can't wait until someone comes out as same-sex attracted and then read the book to know how to react. It would be good to know that in advance. For me, the book also served as a model on how to talk with as much empathy as possible about the topic of same-sex attraction and what the Catholic Church teaches about that. Father Mike stated clearly that people who experience same-sex attraction belong in the Catholic Church and that it is not a them-us problem, but that we're all sitting in the same boat. What that exactly means, I will explain in a separate video about this book. He also often clarified what he meant by certain words in order not to offend anyone. And as someone who is not directly affected by the topic of same-sex attraction, I just imagined what it would feel like for me if someone wrote a book about topics that do affect me personally and how I would feel about that. And I came to the conclusion that this world would be a better place if we all treated each other with as much empathy as Father Mike does in his book. At the same time, he said very clearly that the Catholic Church does not approve of living out same-sex attraction, and he wrote with such clarity that I would say that if C.S. Lewis had written a book about the Christian teachings on same-sex attraction, that's what it would have been like. That's been it for today. I hope you liked the video. See you next week. God bless and bye!